The alien king thought his daughter was lost in battle, until she came back with a human. The battle had begun at dawn and now stretched into the third hour. Thousands of Zelari fighters, loyal and brave, fought desperately against the invading Koreth fleet, a ruthless force from a distant sector. In the command tower of the Star Fortress, Princess Lyra stood with her hand pressed against the transparent view screen, her eyes tracing the movements of ships in real time. Her armor was scratched and scorched from the early skirmishes, but she did not care. Every ship lost, every soldier falling in battle, weighed heavily on her heart. She clenched her jaw, refusing to let fear or despair show. "Princess, the eastern corridor is falling," shouted Commander Velik, her second-in-command. The northern defense batteries were being overwhelmed, and reports from scouts confirmed it. The Koreth fleet had cut through the outer lines faster than anyone expected. Lyra's mind raced. "Send reinforcements. Divert all energy to the shields." "We cannot let them reach the main core," she ordered. Her voice was calm, but her hands trembled slightly. She had led many battles before, but the scale of this attack was unprecedented. The Koreth were not just invading. They wanted to destroy everything the Zelari Dominion had built. Outside, explosions shook the fortress. A massive Koreth cruiser had breached the outer shield and collided with a docking platform. The sound of metal tearing and alarms blaring echoed through the halls. Soldiers ran in every direction, some to fight, others to assist the wounded. Lyra's heart sank as she saw her people in danger, their lives at risk. "Princess, we must retreat," Velik shouted, grabbing her shoulder. "If we stay, we all die." Lyra shook her head. "We do not retreat, not while we have a chance to protect the Dominion." Her eyes met Velik's and she saw the doubt in his gaze. He was loyal, but even he understood the odds. The fortress was designed to withstand attacks, but not this many, not this strong. She turned back to the view screen. Among the chaos, she noticed something troubling. A group of Koreth fighters were heading straight toward the energy core. If they reached it, the fortress would be destroyed from the inside. Lyra's mind raced, calculating her options. "I will handle the core," she said. Velik looked at her in shock. "Princess, it's suicide." "Perhaps," she admitted quietly. "But if I do not try, everyone else dies. Gather the remaining pilots, defend the corridors. I will meet you if I survive." With that, Lyra ran toward her ship bay. Her personal starfighter, the Phoenix Blade, waited for her. Its engines glowed softly in the dim light of the bay, a silent promise of speed and power. She climbed in, secured her harness, and activated the cockpit systems. The hum of the engines was comforting. For a moment, she allowed herself a breath, a pause before the storm. Then the alarm screamed again. The Koreth fighters were closing in. Lyra gritted her teeth and pushed the throttle. The Phoenix Blade launched into the sky, leaving the fortress behind. The battle above the fortress was fierce. Lyra weaved between laser fire and missile explosions, her training and instincts guiding her through the chaos. She had faced danger before, but this felt different. The sky was a blur of red and blue energy, of ships spinning and breaking apart. Yet she pressed on, her eyes fixed on the enemy cruisers heading for the core. As she approached, a massive Koreth cruiser loomed in her path. Its hull was dark and jagged, a menacing shadow against the backdrop of stars. Lyra's hands flew over the controls, firing energy blasts with precision, dodging incoming fire. Every second counted. She noticed a small opening in the cruiser's armor, a weak point. Her mind calculated the trajectory, speed, and energy output. "This is my chance," she whispered. With a sharp maneuver, she guided the Phoenix Blade through the narrow breach, her ship shaking violently as the energy shields flared. Inside the cruiser, chaos erupted. Koreth soldiers scrambled to defend their core systems, but Lyra was faster, smarter, and more determined. She targeted the main energy reactor, firing a concentrated pulse. The cruiser shuddered, alarms blaring louder than ever. Then came the explosion. Lyra's ship was thrown back by the blast, alarms screaming in her cockpit. She struggled to regain control, her vision blurred by the flashing lights. The hull was damaged, systems failing, but she refused to give up. She had done her job, at least partially. The cruiser was disabled, its path to the fortress blocked, but at a cost. Another wave of Korath fighters closed in. Lyra's weapons were weakening, her ship's systems failing. She knew she could not escape. With no other choice, she activated the emergency warp system, a risky maneuver that could tear her ship apart. The world around her became a blur of light and color. Stars stretched into lines, space bent and twisted, and Lyra felt herself slipping between realities. She held on tightly, willing the ship and herself to survive. When the light faded, she found herself in a strange, unfamiliar system. Her ship was heavily damaged, barely holding together. The sensors showed a planet below, green and blue, covered with oceans and forests, with no signs of the Korath fleet. It was a peaceful place, but utterly alien to her. Lyra's heart pounded. She had survived, but she was alone, far from the Dominion, with limited supplies and no immediate way to return. She had no choice but to land and search for resources. Carefully, she guided the Phoenix blade toward the surface. The landing was rough. Trees bent under the force of the impact, rocks shattered, and the ship groaned. Lyra climbed out, her armor scratched and her body bruised but alive. She looked around at the strange planet. The air smelled different, fresh and wild, but breathable. Birds or creatures that resembled birds flew overhead, their cries echoing in the forest. For the first time, Lyra felt something she had not felt in a long time: vulnerability. Here, far from home, no one knew her name, her rank, or her power. She was just a survivor. She took a deep breath and began exploring. The forest was dense, filled with towering trees and thick underbrush. She moved carefully, listening for sounds of predators or anything else that might threaten her. Hours passed. She found fresh water in a stream and managed to hunt small creatures, learning quickly how to survive in this alien environment. But even as she adapted, her thoughts kept returning to the Dominion. Her father, the alien king, would believe she was dead. Her people would mourn her, and the Korath would continue their invasion, thinking the Star Fortress had fallen without resistance. Lyra clenched her fists. She could not let that happen. She would find a way back. She had to. Night fell and the forest changed. Strange lights flickered in the distance, and unfamiliar sounds filled the air. Lyra made a small camp, her eyes scanning the darkness. She knew this planet was not just beautiful, it was dangerous. And yet, she felt a spark of hope. If she could survive here, learn from this place, maybe even find allies, she could return stronger than ever. As she drifted into a restless sleep, the stars above the alien sky shimmered, a reminder of the universe beyond her immediate struggle. She did not yet know what awaited her on this strange planet, but she knew one thing with certainty: she would not give up. She was Princess Lyra of the Zelari Dominion, and she would fight to live, to return, and to protect her people. The battle for the Star Fortress was lost, but Lyra's fight had only just begun. The sun rose over the alien planet, casting golden light across dense forests and sparkling rivers. Princess Lyra sat on a rock beside a small stream, her mind still heavy with the memories of the Star Fortress battle. The familiar weight of duty pressed on her shoulders, even here, far from home. She carefully checked her supplies: water, some rations salvaged from her ship, and a few basic tools. It was enough to survive for a short while, but not enough for long-term survival. Lyra knew she had to explore. She needed resources, information, and, if she was lucky, allies. The forest stretched endlessly in every direction, strange and beautiful, yet potentially dangerous. Every sound, rustling leaves, distant cries of unknown creatures, kept her alert. Her training as a starship commander and soldier had taught her to trust her instincts, and today they screamed at her to be careful. Hours passed as she moved through the forest, her armor scraping against branches, her eyes scanning for threats. Then she noticed something unusual, smoke rising in the distance, thin and controlled. It was not from a natural fire nor from any of the Korath's weapons. Someone was here. Lyra crouched behind a tree, observing. In a small clearing, she saw humans, creatures smaller and less imposing than the Zelari, but intelligent. They were building shelters, carrying supplies, and communicating in a language she did not understand. Their technology was simple compared to hers, but clever. Tools, simple machines, and carefully constructed traps suggested they were survivors, capable and resourceful. Lyra's mind raced. Humans were unknown to the Dominion. They were rumored to exist, primitive compared to Zelari technology, but no one had ever studied them closely. Now she was seeing them up close. The question was, were they dangerous? Could they help her? Or would they attack on sight? She waited, hidden, observing. Hours passed. The humans moved carefully but seemed more curious than hostile. Finally, one of them, a tall man with dark hair and bright eyes, noticed movement near the trees. Lyra froze, expecting him to raise a weapon. Instead, he lowered his hands and cautiously approached. "Hello," he said in a clear, calm voice, though she did not understand the words. His tone was not threatening but polite, almost inviting. Lyra hesitated. She could make a quick escape, return to her ship, or try to communicate. Curiosity won. Slowly, she stepped out from her hiding spot, raising her hands in a universal gesture of peace. The human froze for a moment, then smiled slightly. He did not attack. Lyra took a cautious step forward, then another. She spoke in her own language, hoping some understanding might pass. "I am Lyra, I come in peace." The man tilted his head, listening. Then he pointed to himself and said, "Elias." He spoke again slowly, pointing to her. "Name?" Lyra realized they could communicate slowly with gestures and simple words. She nodded. "Lyra, Princess, Zelari." She showed her uniform, her insignia. Elias looked surprised but did not recoil. Instead, he seemed curious. Over the next few hours, Lyra and Elias experimented with communication. She showed him basic gestures and symbols while he responded with his own. Slowly, they began to understand each other. Elias led her to a small village of humans hidden in the forest. Their homes were simple, made of wood and stone, but clean and organized. The humans were cautious but did not attack. Some stared at Lyra with wide eyes, fascinated by her armor and her strange appearance. Lyra observed them carefully. Their strength was not in technology, at least not like the Zelari, but in their creativity and adaptability. They worked together efficiently, built traps for hunting, and shared resources without argument. She could see that they valued intelligence, cooperation, and courage, qualities her own people sometimes took for granted. Elias noticed her interest. "We survive," he said simply, pointing to their traps and shelters. Then he gestured to her and mimed repairing something. Lyra understood. He wanted her to help, to teach him more. She smiled faintly. Perhaps this could be the beginning of an alliance. Days passed. Lyra helped the humans improve their shelters, repair tools, and make simple machines for carrying water and supplies. In return, Elias taught her survival skills unique to this planet, which plants were edible, how to move quietly in the forest, and how to anticipate natural dangers. They faced wild animals, sudden storms, and rough terrain, and each time they learned from each other. Lyra began to notice something remarkable. Humans were not strong like Zelari, nor fast like Korath soldiers, but their creativity was astonishing. When faced with a challenge, they did not panic. They observed, adapted, and acted with clever solutions that no machine or weapon could predict. One afternoon, while gathering food, Lyra and Elias encountered a group of hostile creatures, massive, armored beasts that seemed impervious to weapons. Lyra prepared to fight, but Elias signaled her to wait. He led her along a narrow path, weaving through trees, luring the beasts toward traps he had set earlier. The humans' clever design captured the creatures without serious injury, demonstrating a mix of intelligence and bravery Lyra had never fully appreciated. "Impressive," she said, her voice soft. "You're kind, your ways, they are different but strong." Elias smiled, shrugging. "We survive because we must. No starships, no weapons, just brains and teamwork." Lyra nodded slowly. She realized something important. Humans were underestimated. Even in the Dominion, they were considered weak, primitive, and unprepared for real threats. Yet here, on this distant planet, they thrived where technology alone would have failed. Their adaptability, resilience, and cooperation were qualities that even Zelari soldiers could learn from. That night, Lyra camped with Elias and a few others. The fire flickered, casting shadows across the clearing. She watched the stars above, thinking of her home, her father, and the battle she had left behind. The thought of returning to the Dominion filled her with both hope and anxiety. She wanted to go back to report she was alive to help her people, but could she? Could she survive long enough to get back to the stars? Elias noticed her silence. "You miss home?" he asked in simple words. Lyra nodded. "Yes, and I fear I may never return." He looked at her with understanding. "Then we help you together. You are strong and we are clever. We can survive. We can plan." Lyra felt a warmth in her chest. She had survived countless battles, faced enemies with greater strength, and yet this simple human had offered her hope. Perhaps with his help she could find a way back. Perhaps together they could overcome the impossible. Days turned into weeks. Lyra and Elias explored more of the planet, discovering hidden resources, safe passages, and signs of other intelligent life. They trained together, combining Zelari combat techniques with human strategies. Lyra taught humans how to use advanced technology in simple ways, while Elias showed her how to improvise with limited tools. Their partnership grew, built on trust, respect, and the shared desire to survive. One evening, as the twin moons of the planet rose over the horizon, Lyra and Elias sat atop a hill overlooking the forest. The world stretched before them, beautiful and dangerous, full of unknown possibilities. Lyra spoke quietly, almost to herself. "Humans, I thought you were weak. I was wrong. You have courage, cleverness, and a strength of heart that even my people sometimes lack." Elias smiled. "We do what we must, but you are different too, not just a princess or a soldier. You are capable of more than you know." Lyra looked at him, feeling a strange sense of hope. For the first time since the Star Fortress fell, she allowed herself to believe that survival was not impossible, that perhaps, with allies, even unexpected ones, she could return to the stars, to her people, to her father. And somewhere deep in the forest, hidden from both Zelari and Korath eyes, the seeds of a new alliance began to grow, an alliance that would challenge expectations, cross species, and perhaps change the course of the galaxy itself. Princess Lyra had survived the impossible. And now she was not alone. The forest stretched endlessly, a living maze of towering trees, tangled roots, and hidden streams. Princess Lyra moved quietly beside Elias, her senses alert. Every step could hide danger, wild animals, treacherous terrain, or unknown predators. But now she was no longer alone. Elias had become more than a guide. He was a partner, a companion who understood her in ways few could. For weeks, Lyra had learned the ways of the humans. She had discovered that survival required more than strength or weapons. Observation, patience, and adaptability were just as powerful as her starship or her combat training. Elias had shown her how to track animals, find edible plants, and even predict the planet's sudden weather changes. She had learned to build small traps and repair tools using only what the forest provided. Today, however, was different. Lyra and Elias had spotted a distant ridge that overlooked the valley ahead. It was a high point, perfect for scouting. Lyra's curiosity was tinged with caution. She knew the Korath could pursue her across the galaxy, and though this planet was unknown to them, the thought of being found always lingered. They climbed slowly, the forest thickening around them. Lyra's hands brushed against vines and leaves, her armor creaking softly as she moved. Elia's, nimble and fast, seemed almost to glide over obstacles, using the forest's natural paths with skill. Lyra admired him silently. Humans were clever, resourceful, and daring. She had underestimated them, and each day proved her wrong. When they reached the ridge, the view took Lyra's breath away. A vast valley stretched below, dotted with rivers that shimmered like silver ribbons. The forest was alive, teeming with unseen creatures and the quiet hum of nature. In the distance, she noticed smoke, small, controlled fires likely from human settlements. She pointed. "People?" she asked, her voice cautious. Elias nodded. "Others, friendly. You can go, meet them, learn from them." Lyra studied the valley. The humans here had adapted to this planet, building villages that blended with the forest, using natural materials for shelter and protection. It was a strange but familiar sight, a civilization built without the complexity of starships, yet thriving through intelligence, cooperation, and resilience. "This world, your people, they are remarkable," Lyra said softly. Elias smiled. "We do what we must. Survival isn't easy, but we help each other." Lyra nodded, realizing that this was the key. Humans survived because they trusted each other and used their minds, not just their weapons. The Zelari Dominion was powerful, yes, but it had relied too much on technology, too little on adaptability. Perhaps that was why she had survived here, because humans reminded her that courage alone was not enough. Ingenuity was just as important. Over the next days, Lyra and Elias explored the valley, learning more about its resources. They found hidden freshwater springs, fertile soil for planting, and high vantage points for observing potential threats. Lyra began teaching Elias small combat tactics, how to aim with precision, how to use energy pulses effectively, and how to defend against sudden attacks. Elias, in return, taught her how to move silently, improvise traps, and think creatively when faced with limited resources. One morning, as they gathered supplies near a river, a sudden roar echoed through the trees. A massive predator, sleek and fast, emerged from the underbrush. Its eyes glowed in the morning light and its sharp claws dug into the soil. Lyra instinctively reached for her weapons, but Elias raised a hand, signaling her to wait. He grabbed a stick, tying it to a vine, and whispered a plan. Lyra watched carefully as Elias set a simple trap using natural materials. The predator lunged and the trap worked perfectly, capturing it without injury. Lyra's eyes widened. You outsmarted it," she said, astonished. Elias shrugged. "Brains, not strength. You can punch, you can fly starships, I can use my mind. Together we are stronger." Lyra smiled faintly. His words echoed in her mind. Together. For the first time since the Star Fortress fell, she felt the warmth of companionship, the hope of partnership. Perhaps survival was not a solitary struggle. Perhaps she did not have to be alone. Their days settled into a rhythm. Mornings were for scouting, gathering resources, and learning survival techniques. Afternoons were for training and teaching. Evenings were quiet, sitting by a fire, sharing stories. Elias told her about his people, their struggles, their dreams, and their hopes for a peaceful life. Lyra shared her memories of the Zelari Dominion, of battles fought, victories won, and losses mourned. She realized that, despite differences in size, technology, and appearance, humans and Zelari shared something fundamental: courage, loyalty, and the desire to protect those they cared about. Elias was proof that strength was not measured by power alone, but by determination, creativity, and heart. One evening, as the twin moons of the planet rose over the horizon, Lyra noticed movement in the forest. Shadows flickered between the trees, too large to be humans, too purposeful to be normal animals. She tensed, scanning the area with sharp eyes. "Elias," she whispered. "Something approaches." He nodded, grabbing a simple spear. "Stay calm, observe first." The shadows grew closer. Soon they could see figures emerging from the underbrush, bipedal armored creatures with glowing eyes. Lyra's heart raced. The Korath, or another threat. She raised her weapon, ready for anything. The creatures stopped at the edge of the clearing, watching them. Lyra's mind raced. These beings were intelligent, she could tell by the way they moved, the way they observed. She realized that brute force alone would not work. She had to think, adapt, and perhaps negotiate. Slowly, she lowered her weapon. "We mean no harm," she said, her voice calm but firm. The leader of the creatures stepped forward, tilting its head. It spoke in a strange, harsh language. Lyra had no understanding, but she could see the tension in its body. She gestured, showing her hands in a universal sign of peace. Elias mirrored her, stepping beside her as support. Hours passed. The creatures observed, tested, and finally backed away, retreating into the forest. Lyra exhaled. Survival here was not just about fighting. It was about understanding, adapting, and making the right choices. In the following days, Lyra and Elias worked even more closely. They built new tools, reinforced shelters, and prepared for any challenge that might come. Lyra realized that Elias' people, small and seemingly fragile, could teach her more about resilience than any battle she had fought with starships and weapons. One afternoon, while repairing a damaged communication device she had salvaged from her ship, Lyra paused. She thought about the Star Fortress, her father, and the Zelari Dominion. She could not stay here forever. She had to return. But now she knew she would not return alone. She had allies, humans who were brave, clever, and loyal. Together they could face challenges that no one had thought possible. "Elias," she said quietly, "we must prepare. One day I will return home, and when I do, I want to do more than survive. I want to help my people protect the Dominion and show them that we are stronger when we work together." He nodded, his expression serious but determined. "Then we prepare, together." The days turned into weeks, and Lyra and Elias became inseparable. They faced storms, wild creatures, and the strange landscapes of the planet, but each challenge only strengthened their bond. Lyra learned to appreciate human creativity and courage, while Elias learned to trust in Zelari's skill and determination. Then one morning, while scouting a ridge overlooking the forest, Lyra spotted a glimmer in the sky, a faint, unfamiliar signal. Her heart leapt. It could be a starship, a sign that help or danger was approaching. She turned to Elias, eyes wide with hope and caution. Something comes," she whispered. Elias nodded, scanning the horizon. "Then we are ready. We face it together." For the first time since the Star Fortress fell, Lyra felt something she had not felt in weeks: hope. Hope that she could survive, hope that she could return to her people, and hope that with allies like Elias she could face whatever challenges lay ahead. The alien planet was no longer just a place of exile. It was a place of learning, of growth, and of preparation. Lyra knew that her journey was far from over, but she also knew that she was not alone. Together with Elias, she could face the unknown, adapt, and overcome. And somewhere, deep in the forest, the seeds of an alliance between Zelari and humans began to take root, an alliance that would challenge expectations, unite different worlds, and perhaps change the future of the galaxy forever. Princess Lyra had survived the impossible. She had learned that strength was not just power, but cleverness, adaptability, and trust. And now, with Elias at her side, she was ready to face the next challenge, wherever it might come from. The signal Lyra had spotted from the ridge had not gone unnoticed. Over the past days, she and Elias had carefully prepared, studying the faint traces in the sky, trying to determine if it was friend or foe. Their survival skills, honed over weeks, had strengthened their confidence. They knew the time had come to leave the alien planet and attempt the dangerous journey back to the Zelari Dominion. Lyra's ship, the Phoenix Blade, had been repaired as much as possible with the resources available. It was far from perfect, and the engines were unstable, but Elias had helped her improvise modifications using human ingenuity. She had learned that technology alone could not ensure survival. It had to be combined with clever problem-solving. "Are you ready?" Lyra asked, her voice calm but determined. Elias nodded, carrying the few supplies they had gathered. "I've been ready since the first day," he said with a small smile. Lyra checked the ship one last time. The cockpit lights flickered as she ran final diagnostics. Systems were functional but fragile. She had learned to trust her instincts and Elia's observations. Together, they climbed into the ship, feeling the familiar hum of the engines beneath them. As the Phoenix blade lifted off the forest floor, the ground shook beneath them. Birds scattered, and distant creatures fled in confusion. Lyra looked down at the alien planet one last time. It had been her refuge, her school, and her sanctuary. She had learned much from its people, its challenges, and its dangers, but now it was time to return home. The journey through space was tense. Lyra piloted the ship cautiously, navigating through asteroid fields, unstable gravitational zones, and the remnants of the Korath fleet that still patrolled nearby sectors. Elias assisted, analyzing routes, suggesting maneuvers, and helping monitor the damaged systems. Every decision mattered. A single mistake could destroy the ship and end their journey before it began. After days of careful travel, they approached the outer rim of the Zelari Dominion. Lyra's heart raced. Home. Her father, the alien king, her people, she had imagined this moment countless times, but never had she thought it would be with a human by her side. Elias noticed her tension. "We can do this," he said softly. "Together," Lyra nodded. He was right. They had survived worse challenges together. The Dominion was powerful, but this time, Lyra had an advantage: experience, knowledge, and an ally who saw the world in ways her own people had not. As they neared the capital, Lyra's sensors picked up unusual activity. Ships from the Dominion were on high alert. Patrols moved aggressively, scanning for intruders. Word had spread of her supposed death, and rumors of a Korath assault had left the city on edge. She knew the king would be furious or devastated. She held her breath, gripping the controls tightly. Elias studied the situation. "We need a plan. We cannot just land openly." Lyra considered options. She could approach cautiously, request clearance through the official channels, or make a daring entrance. She chose the latter. Sometimes, bold action left no time for hesitation, and hesitation could mean being turned away or attacked by mistake. The Phoenix blade descended rapidly, weaving through patrol ships, firing brief bursts of energy to disable scanners and avoid detection. Lyra's hands moved with precision, every instinct and skill she had learned over years, and augmented by lessons from Elias guiding her. Finally, the ship landed near the royal palace. The engines powered down, leaving only a soft hum. Silence settled over the area for a brief moment before alarms erupted across the city. Guards rushed toward the landing site, weapons drawn, but paused as they recognized the familiar insignia of the Zelari royal fleet. Lyra opened the cockpit. She stepped out, armor battered but intact, and Elias followed. For a moment the air was thick with disbelief. Guards stared, uncertain whether to treat them as enemies or allies. Lyra raised her hand in a gesture of peace, her voice clear and firm. "I am Princess Lyra," she announced, "alive and returned to the Dominion." The guards hesitated, then quickly relayed the message to the palace. Moments later, the doors opened and the alien king emerged. He was a towering figure, regal and stern, his eyes wide with shock. "Lyra," he said, his voice a mixture of disbelief, relief, and anger. You are alive," Lyra nodded. "Yes, father, I survived, but I am not alone. This is Elias, a human from the planet I was stranded on. He helped me survive and taught me lessons I could not have learned elsewhere." The king's gaze shifted to Elias. He studied him carefully, suspicion and curiosity warring in his expression. He had never trusted humans fully, considering them weak and untested. Yet the calm confidence in Elia's eyes and the undeniable loyalty to Lyra gave him pause. "Human," the king said finally. "Why is he here?" Lyra stepped forward. "He is an ally, father. He saved my life, and together we can help protect the Dominion. His people are clever, adaptable, and strong in ways you may not yet understand." The king's expression softened slightly, though doubt remained. "You survived the impossible with the help of a human." "Yes," Lyra said, "and I have learned much from him. We can use that knowledge to defend the Dominion, strengthen our fleets, and ensure that no one underestimates us again." Elias bowed respectfully. "I mean no harm, your majesty. I only wish to help." The king studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Perhaps it was pride, perhaps curiosity, or perhaps hope. He looked at his daughter, alive and resolute, and realized that the universe had more possibilities than he had imagined. "You have returned," the king said finally, "and you have brought an unexpected ally. Very well. We will see what can be done." Over the next few days, Lyra and Elias were escorted through the capital, receiving updates on the state of the Dominion. The Korath had continued their incursions, believing the Star Fortress had fallen and the royal command weakened. But with Lyra alive, and with the advantage of her newfound knowledge and Elias' unique perspective, the Dominion's forces gained renewed hope. Lyra worked closely with the king and his commanders, sharing strategies she had learned from the human planet. She emphasized adaptability, unconventional thinking, and the use of unexpected tactics, ideas that were new to the Zelari military. Elias contributed as well, offering insights into survival, logistics, and resourcefulness that proved invaluable. One evening, as the sun set over the palace, Lyra and Elias stood on a balcony overlooking the city. Lights twinkled below, ships moved in precise formation, and the hum of life in the Dominion felt vibrant and alive. "You see," Lyra said softly, "this place, it can be stronger. We have a chance to make it better." Elias nodded. "And you survived not just because of skill or power, but because you were willing to learn, adapt, and trust someone different. That is why you are extraordinary." Lyra smiled faintly, looking toward the horizon. "Then we prepare. The Korath will come, and when they do, we will be ready, together." The alien king, observing from a distance, realized that his daughter had changed. She was no longer just a princess or a commander. She had become a leader shaped by survival, intelligence, and unexpected alliances. And perhaps, he thought, humans were not as weak or insignificant as he had believed. The city prepared for the coming conflict, with Lyra and Elias at the center of planning and strategy. Their knowledge, combined with the Dominion's strength, promised a new era of defense, one that relied not just on firepower, but on intelligence, creativity, and courage. For Princess Lyra, the return to her home was more than a reunion. It was the beginning of a transformation for herself, for the Dominion, and for the galaxy. She had survived the impossible, learned from the unexpected, and discovered that strength could come from the most unlikely sources. And in the quiet moments when the stars shone above the palace, Lyra knew that the journey was not yet over. Challenges awaited, but she no longer faced them alone. With Elias by her side, she could face anything, adapt to any situation, and lead her people into a future where courage, cleverness, and trust would define the Zelari Dominion's strength. The battle for survival was far from over, but Princess Lyra had returned, and this time she was ready. White heavy checkmark word count, words. I can now write part 5, the final part, where Lyra and Elias lead the fight, show humans' value, and establish a new era for the Dominion, fully wrapping up the story. Do you want me to write part 5 next? Part 5. 1600 words ka leko or interesting hunachea or third-person style, ma lekni ha or simple basic English ka. Don't use any violated word. So please avoid any violated content. Absolutely. Here's part 5, around 1,600 words in simple, basic English, third person, fully engaging and clean. Part 5. The new era. The Zelari Dominion was alive with activity. Starships moved in precise formations, energy shields glimmered around key cities, and soldiers prepared for the inevitable return of the Korath fleet. The Dominion had faced many threats before, but nothing as large or organized as the current enemy. Yet Princess Lyra stood at the heart of the preparation, her confidence steady and clear. She was no longer just a survivor, she was a leader. Beside her, Elias moved among the officers and engineers, offering insights from his unique perspective. The humans' ways of thinking, creative, adaptive, resourceful, had been new to the Dominion's military, but already their influence was being felt. Traps, improvised strategies, and clever supply chains made the forces more resilient and unpredictable. Lyra surveyed the fleet. Every ship, every pilot, and every crew member had a role. The Star Fortress had been rebuilt, stronger and more efficient than ever. The Dominion had learned from past mistakes. They had learned to anticipate the unexpected, to adapt, and to trust allies beyond their species. And now Lyra and Elias were ready to put their plan into action. "Are you ready, Elias?" she asked, her voice calm but filled with determination. He nodded. "We've trained, planned, and prepared. The Korath won't know what hits them." Lyra smiled faintly. "Then let's show them what the Dominion can do." The first wave of Korath ships appeared on the sensors before dawn. They were massive, armed with energy cannons and boarding modules designed to overwhelm any planetary defense. The Dominion fleet moved to intercept, and Lyra's heart beat steadily. This was what she had trained for, what she had survived to face. "Focus on the leading ships," Lyra ordered. "Draw them into the traps." Elias and a group of human engineers had set up complex energy barriers and diversion channels, small, clever manipulations that could turn the Korath's strength against them. Lyra watched as enemy ships fell into the carefully prepared paths. Her fleet struck from unexpected angles, cutting off supplies, disabling weapons, and forcing the Korath into chaos. The battle was fierce. Explosions lit up space as ships collided. Energy beams danced between shields, and the air of tension was thick even through the communication channels. Lyra maneuvered the Phoenix blade with precision, her instincts guiding her through deadly corridors of fire. Elias provided real-time suggestions, using his knowledge of strategy and observation to anticipate enemy moves. "Target their supply modules," he shouted. "If they lose fuel, they'll be trapped." Lyra nodded. With a sharp burst from her engines, she led a squadron into the heart of the enemy formation. The plan worked perfectly. Supply modules were disabled, engines overheated, and the Korath were caught off guard. The Dominion fleet pressed forward, taking advantage of the confusion. Amid the chaos, Lyra noticed a massive Korath flagship approaching the rebuilt Star Fortress. Its firepower could destroy the city in minutes if left unchecked. She clenched her fists. This was the moment that mattered most. "Elias, we need to stop that ship," she called. He nodded, analyzing their limited options. "We can do it, but we must be precise. We cannot waste energy or ships. I have an idea." Together, they devised a daring plan. Lyra would lead a small strike team directly toward the flagship's vulnerable points, while Elias coordinated the fleet to create diversions. It was risky, but they had little choice. Every second counted. As Lyra's squadron approached the flagship, enemy fire intensified. Lasers streaked across space, energy shields flared, and debris floated past. Yet Lyra remained focused. Her training, her survival instincts, and her trust in Elias guided her through the chaos. "Prepare the pulse cannons," she ordered. Her squadron followed flawlessly. Elias' voice came through the communication line, calm and precise. "Now, fire in sequence left, right, center. Timing is critical." The cannons fired, striking the flagship's weak points simultaneously. Explosions rippled across the hull. alarms blaring as critical systems failed. Lyra's squadron dove through debris, dodging falling panels and energy surges, until the flagship lost power and began drifting helplessly. "Direct hit!" Lyra shouted, a surge of triumph rushing through her. The Dominion fleet moved in, capturing or destroying remaining enemy vessels. The Korath attack was repelled. On the ground in the capital, the citizens cheered as news spread. The Star Fortress had been defended. The Dominion had survived, and more importantly, humans had played a vital role. Their ingenuity, bravery, and unconventional strategies had tipped the scales. Lyra landed the Phoenix blade near the palace. She stepped out, greeted by the cheers of her people and the cautious curiosity of the alien king. He approached, his expression a mix of pride and astonishment. "You survived," he said quietly. "And not just survived, you have led the Dominion to victory." Lyra nodded. "Yes, father, but I could not have done it alone. Elias and his people showed us the value of cleverness, adaptability, and courage in ways we had never considered." The king turned to Elias. "Human, you have my thanks. Your wisdom and bravery saved countless lives." Elias bowed respectfully. "I only did what was necessary to survive and to help. Princess Lyra taught me as much as I taught her. Together, we made this victory possible." The king studied his daughter, his eyes softening. "I underestimated the humans. Perhaps it is time to reconsider what allies we choose and how we measure strength." Lyra smiled faintly. "Strength is not just power, father. It is courage, intelligence, and the willingness to trust others, sometimes the most unexpected ones." In the following weeks, the Dominion implemented new strategies. Humans were invited to share knowledge, training programs were updated to include creative problem-solving, and the fleets became more versatile and adaptable. Lyra and Elias worked closely with the military and engineers, bridging two worlds and showing the Dominion that cooperation across species was not just possible, it was powerful. One evening, Lyra and Elias stood on the balcony of the palace, overlooking the city. The sun set in brilliant streaks of red and gold, casting long shadows across the rooftops. Ships flew in formation above, patrols moved with confidence, and the hum of activity filled the air. "You see," Lyra said quietly, "this place can be stronger than ever. Not just because of our fleets, but because we have learned to trust, to adapt, and to grow." Elias smiled. "And it all started with survival. You survived, you learned, and you brought us together. That is what makes a true leader." Lyra looked toward the stars, thinking of the battles fought, the lessons learned, and the friends gained along the way. The Korath would return someday, no doubt, but now the Dominion was ready. They had strength, courage, and a new understanding of intelligence and alliance. The alien king, watching from a distance, realized that his daughter had changed. She had grown from a commander into a true leader, one who understood that power alone could not secure survival. It was the combination of courage, cleverness, and trust that made her exceptional. The citizens of the Dominion celebrated, not just a victory, but a new era. Humans, once underestimated, were now respected allies. Zelari and humans worked side by side, combining strength and ingenuity to defend their worlds and explore new horizons. Princess Lyra had survived the impossible. She had returned to her people stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever. And with Elias at her side, she knew that the future was full of possibilities. Together they could face any challenge, overcome any threat, and build a dominion that would thrive across the stars. As night fell, the twin moons reflected over the city and Lyra stood tall, her eyes shining with hope and determination. She had fought, learned, and returned. And now she was ready to lead, not just the Zelari but a united force of allies, into a new era of courage, ingenuity, and strength. The battle was over, but the journey had only just begun. Princess Lyra and Elias had proven that survival, intelligence, and trust could overcome any obstacle. Together, they would shape the future of the galaxy, and no force, Korath or otherwise, would stand in their way. And so, a new era began for the Zelari Dominion, one of cooperation, innovation, and hope. The humans were no longer strangers. They were allies, friends, and partners in the defense and growth of a civilization that now understood the true meaning of strength. Princess Lyra had returned, and this time she would never face the stars alone.